Design is action, and I think that in our rush to specialize, we have missed the essence of UX, and that is make a really easy to use app. And that's it. What's up everyone, and thanks for hanging with me. In this video, we're going to go over the exact steps that I took to get into design. I'm a self-taught designer who's now running an agency called Rad Collab, where we build apps on TikTok. We have over 70,000 people a part of our community, and we're on a mission to change the way that people look at MVP product development. But before all that happened, we had to start somewhere, so let's dive in. The first tip that I want to start with is start with UI, not with UX. UI is everything that you see, and UX is the reason that you're seeing them. And because of that gray area, it's really tempting for new designers to dive into the UX career path to make up for a lack of portfolio. But I think you need to walk before you can run. All design, like any other skill, takes practice. And it's a lot easier and more tangible to practice UI because you have an end product to judge yourself on. With UI, you'll be able to search for inspiration, make your own app or design off of that, and then compare it to that inspiration to be able to see if it's better, worse, or the same. With UX, at best, you're going to get a wireframe, and it's much harder to get tangible feedback from people who aren't you. Some people will tell you that UI and UX are completely separate, but I think that you can't be a good UI designer without having a UX background, and you can't be a good UX designer without being able to picture that in a UI sense. No matter what the app is, people need a story to follow. And so I think that the best UI designers are also really good experience designers as well. My second tip for getting into design is copying the greats. Find the coolest, most trendy work on Dribbble, copy it into your program, and trace it out pixel by pixel. I would even recommend doing it 2 or 3 times, timing yourself and trying to go as fast as you can while still getting better every time. Listen, this isn't meant for anybody but yourself, and this is not just an exercise. Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. When you're starting out and you learn all the programs, you see new designs and you say, I think I could do that. And maybe you can, but I'll wager that in a year's time, you'll be way better than what it is now. And so no matter what, if you copy better people than you, you'll understand what they're doing to get better. This is all about getting reps in. As you do this, you're going to be able to see the techniques and the processes that these people do. And then eventually you'll be comfortable enough with them to be able to call on them later on your own. And that's when you become a designer. Little disclaimer here. I'm not telling you to steal their work, and by no means should you post any of this publicly. This is for your personal development only. You know, I never heard anybody talking about this tip before, so I'd love to hear your opinion on it. Have you done this, or do you plan on doing this? Let me know in the comments. Tip number 3, it's time to get real. Okay, once you've got a base understanding of how people use techniques to make good design, it's time to do something for somebody else based on what they want. I'm not saying go ask your mom what apps she thinks you should make. I'm saying find a project that actually matters to somebody and then do that with them. A lot of people get caught up in the early validation of making money off of their work. But right now, you're trying to walk before you can run. And because of that, now is not the time that you should be thinking about cashing in on your design skills. Do it for free or offer extremely low prices. All you need to do is do something that matters to somebody else besides just you. Design is all about context. Every project that I've ever had that failed was because I didn't get to the point where I knew what they wanted exactly. And most of the time it's because they don't know what they want, but they do know what they don't want. So getting to the point where you're working for somebody else or with somebody else on something that they care about, it makes it so that you have to learn how to do that dance. Additionally, when you're working for somebody else, you learn to make compromises. And I think that design should be an egoless position, but at the same time, it is a creative position. And so it's really hard to pull your ego out. And you just need those reps to get used to letting things go. When I was starting out, I co-founded a startup. And while that was for me, it also had real business stakes for me and my co-founders. I constantly felt like I was months away from being a millionaire. And it was all due to my designs. I got so much better because it had real stakes that mattered not just to me. The creative field demand a lot of processes, and there's no way to learn those processes by working on spec work. Just like you're getting those reps in to build your skills, you need to get those reps in on working with other people, no matter if it's a client or a partner in a project. We're going to talk about user experience design or UX design. Now listen, a lot of UX boot camps will focus on the research side of the UX specialist. I can't tell you how many resumes I've seen that have the same user personas, same graphs, and same dense paragraphs of text, but no action that gets taken on that. Design is action, and I think that in our rush to specialize, we have missed the essence of UX, and that is make a really easy to use app. And that's it. UX design is the strategy that goes behind the UI. Where UI says, I'm going to put the button here, UX says, we need a button that does this thing. At the end of the day, you can't really design anything on any level without having the user in mind. That's why I like to say any user interface designer should also have good UX background. This is why I think a lot of newcomers try to specialize in UX out of the gate, because they think that it's going to make up for a lack of a good portfolio for UI. No matter what job you're going after, you have to prove with tangible evidence that you are legit. But how can you make that an easy job for a hiring manager? Rather than sending charts and graphs and a user persona list that I don't care about, send me super simple, dialed down evidence that you know how to take an idea and turn it into an action plan, because that is what UX is. Let's talk about user flows, because it's pretty much all I do every day. Going off of that action plan that I said before, a user flow is basically tangible evidence of your brain power as a UX specialist. You can do all the research in the world, but you wouldn't show that research in a marketing plan. You would say, this app does this. It's action. Design is action. You write out the main paths that the user will take while journeying through your app. Keep it simple and focus on the reasons that they're taking those actions. I'm telling you right now, if I had two people come to me trying to get a UX position, one gave me a research paper and one gave me a bulleted list of step-by-step through an app that they're going to make, you know what I would choose. Every user has a desire while using an app, whether it's a reset password or trying to find more information about a specific topic. Our goal as UX designers then is to make it as frictionless as possible to support that desire. If you stay focused on that user flow, you'll have a really good understanding of what the user will probably want to be doing anywhere in the app. That's usually where I end my UX process, but some people like to take it even further and do what's called user stories. User stories are basically written out desires of every user on every screen. It includes statements such as a user, I want to, or as a admin, I want to. Those help us frame the desire. Then it goes into what they want to do. So as a user, I want to reset my password. Then it goes into the user's desire. So as a user, I want to reset my password when I forgot it. In my opinion, user stories are a little overkill, but for larger teams where there's a UX specialist that all they do is map out the user journeys, then it probably is worth it, so that way they can hand it off to the next person. Let me know in the comments what you think of user flows versus user journeys and which one you prefer to use. Once you have the user desires mapped out, it's time to rank them by most important. On each screen, I try to focus on one key interaction moment per screen. Let's go back to the password resets. That is not the most important interaction on that screen. The login is. So everything should be supporting the big login button at the bottom. And it's at the bottom because the form on top of it guides the user that you need to finish these things before you can get to the main interaction. Anything else, such as a create account call to action or a reset password, those are secondary interactions where if a user wants to do those things, they should be able to, but it shouldn't be the most prevalent option. New designers often want to fit everything into one screen. And sometimes it works, but most of the time it doesn't. So you always need to remember what is the most important part of this screen, and then build everything else in support of that. Then you can sprinkle in the secondary options. Now we're ready to talk about wireframes. Wireframes are basically black and white mockups focused on layouts. Writing out the user flows, turning them into user journeys, then sorting those by importance will allow you to give an action plan to every screen. You take that action plan and turn it into a layout. That's wires. If you're a really small team, you might be both a UI and a UX person. So that means that for the client, you're going to create low fidelity mockups. I've mostly worked on small teams, so I don't limit myself to only black and white flat mockups. I sometimes add shadow, and I sometimes add different levels of grayscale, just to help support the understanding of how the app is going to be laid out. But for larger teams where there is a defined UX role, it's good to separate that from the UI. That way, the UI can just go in and kill it. All right, let's talk about UX specialties. And this list is growing all the time. I think literally what we're doing on TikTok is creating a new role. Maybe it's a social research technologist. I don't know. As technology advances, new roles open up. As businesses and startups become more business-like, more processes are going to be put in place to allow people to do really specific things. And that's where UX is going right now. From my experience, small teams have at most one UX specialist, but usually that person is a hybrid between a UI and a UX person. And that's just because bigger teams allow for smaller roles. Usually that entails a UX researcher, and that person is less of a designer and more of a research specialist. So their whole job is to set up user tests and then manage those tests and decide on what to do next based on the data. I think that UX design is going to start getting further and further away from the actual designs. So if you're trying to get into UX, really specialize in research and how research is set up, managed, and maintained. Companies like Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, they all run massive tests on massive amounts of users and then use those to determine the best features to use. Also, if you're just starting with design and you have a preference for UX, you might want to check out Framer. It's basically a replacement of Figma, Sketch, Photoshop, Illustrator. And people like Spotify are using it to run tests on live users directly from the design program. Pretty insane, right? If you got anything out of this video, please let me know in the comments. We're on a mission to change the way people look at MVP product development. We share tips on design, startups, and marketing. So make sure you hit subscribe if you want to join the party. In the next video, we're going to talk about TikTok and how to design in real time, really fast, on a live stage. I think nobody in the world has more experience than me at that right now. Hey, so you may want to ding that bell to get reminded of the next video.